Welcome. This is a candidates forum for District 9 of the United States House of Representatives. The forum is being co-sponsored by the University of Pacific Political Science Department and the League of Women Voters of San Joaquin County. My name is Kathy Cazenave, and I will be the moderator. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you that the deadline for registering to vote is October 22nd. If you have a California's driver's license or an ID card, you can now register online at the Secretary of State's website. And that website is www.sos.ca.gov. I'd now like to introduce our panelists. Daphne Shaw from the League of Women Voters of San Joaquin County, Dr. Robert Benedetti, political science professor at University of Pacific, and Tim Daly, the reporter for Channel 10 News. So now we'll get started with the opening statements. The first candidate to make his opening statement is Jerry McNerney.
Thank you. Good evening. Is my microphone working? Good evening.
No.
Can everyone hear me? Good evening.
Yes.
Well, good evening, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the University of the Pacific for holding this forum tonight. Before coming to Congress, I spent more than 20 years in industry, many of those years as a small businessman, but what really inspired me to run for Congress was my son Michael, who's here tonight, who called me from the United States Air Force and said, "Dad, people in our district need to have a choice. I want you to run for Congress and serve our country like I am." But about a year ago, when the new districts were decided, I had to come out here and run because this district has so much potential. I want to be a part of its growth and expansion, and I'll have three priorities in the next Congress. First of all is creating jobs and improving the economy here in San Joaquin County and across the nation. Second is protecting our delta, which is the most valuable natural resource we have. And third is continuing to serve our nation's veterans. With that, I welcome your questions, and I hope you can leave here with my positions.
Thank you. Ricky Gill, please give us your opening statement.
Sure. Thank you to the University of the Pacific for hosting us. Thank you to the League for organizing this forum, to our moderators, our panelists, and the citizens watching this debate. My name is Ricky Gill. I am a family farmer and a former member of the California State Board of Education. I am born and raised in the heart of the 9th Congressional District. The reason I decided to run for Congress is that we face a crippling level of underrepresentation in this district. We have been politically marginalized. And for 6 years, we have outsourced our congressmen in the Bay Area. The results are ever present. We have a double the national unemployment rate here. We have foreclosures that are sky high and failing schools. And the clarion call of my campaign is to answer these challenges. I do firmly believe that we cannot send the same people to Washington and expect a different result. If elected, my priorities would be as follows: to put our community back to work, to fix our schools, and to clean up government. I believe we do have a better path forward and a brighter future. I look forward to this spirited debate with my opponent, and thank you all for having me.
Daphne, yeah, please hold your applause until the end. The first question is from Daphne Shaw to Mr. McNerney. Daphne Shaw to Mr. McNerney.
High suicide rates have been reported among regular military troops, as well as National Guard and reservists returning from deployment in the Middle East war zones. According to news reports, individuals seeking help for stress and/or PTSD are often ignored or are put on long waiting lists for treatment programs. And recently, the Veterans Administration announced that it would no longer support the use of service dogs for veterans suffering from PTSD, as they say there is no proof that they are effective, and instead is embarking on a study to be completed in 2014. What changes should the government make to help these troops overcome the stresses resulting from their combat experiences and to adjust successfully to civilian life again?
Thank you, Daphne. I've been over to Iraq and Afghanistan and witnessed the severe conditions that our young soldiers are experiencing over there. They are working as hard as they can in very difficult positions, many of them experiencing horrible experiences. They come back to this country and they are going to naturally need a certain amount of time to adjust. They might need counseling, they need job training, and it's our duty and our responsibility to provide that to our young veterans. I've been a very big advocate for Veterans Affairs. I wrote and passed a bipartisan bill called the Traumatic Brain Injury Bill that helps veterans with traumatic brain injury by identifying that injury and by identifying treatments. It also is effective for post-traumatic stress, which is very difficult situation for these young veterans. They come back home with these problems. Their difficulty holding jobs, staying in relationships. We need to make sure that none of these veterans fall through the cracks, that we give them the service. And I have absolutely dedicated myself in this county by bringing home a veterans hospital to our county, which will also create jobs. But we have a sacred responsibility to provide the services that our veterans have earned and they deserve to become productive members of society after horrible experiences of war.
Mr. Gill.
I would agree that those fighting for us overseas demand responsibility at home from our elected officials. We should not be balancing the budget on the backs of our nation's heroes. I firmly agree with that principle. Our returning veterans expect nothing less than the best of public service from our elected officials. I've vowed to expedite claims processing. You know, many veterans returning from overseas face a backlog of claims, and that deferred benefit is too often denied, and that's something we need to focus on and fix. I think a critical priority has to be this VA hospital. The funds have been authorized, but they need to be appropriated. And coming now and 6 years from now is probably not soon enough. What I would say with respect to veterans is this is a cross-partisan priority. It should not be monopolized by any one individual. It is simply too sacred of an obligation. That's why I'm proud to say that in this campaign, I've earned the endorsement of the chairman of the Veterans Committee in Congress, Congressman Jeff Miller. And I do believe that on this issue, there was a low point that was reached in this campaign about 15 or 20 days ago. My opponent sent out a fundraising solicitation where he said, I can't bear the thought of losing my seat to someone who won't care about our nation's veterans. I don't think that's right. I think this principle is too important for one person to monopolize. It is a cross-partisan priority. I want to emphasize veteran services, and I do think it is a priority for any elected official, no matter what their partisan political persuasion.
The next question is from Dr. Benedetti, first to Mr. Gill.
According to Reality Track, this September, Stockton is still among the top 5 urban areas in the country in foreclosures. Clearly, the housing crisis continues to impact our area disproportionately. What would you urge Congress to do to provide relief?
This is an issue that has really touched the psyche of our community. It has hurt people. There's massive economic hardship here, and frankly, this is an example of government run amok. We made promises that we couldn't keep. Those big banks that were supposed to be regulated got too close to the regulators. I want to say that the least we should expect from our member of Congress is that they approach the issue with clean hands. I have made a very deliberate decision in this campaign not to take any money from big Wall Street banks. My opponent did not make that same decision. Across his 6 years in Congress, he has accepted $3 million in special interest money, $300,000 of which came from the big Wall Street banks that drove our economy into the ditch. I think we need to maintain an open mind on this issue, and I believe that it's going to require that clean approach to fix this issue.
Mr. McNerney.
Thank you. This is certainly an important question. The foreclosures is a very big problem for Stockton and for many communities around our nation. I myself was unemployed for many years, so I know what unemployment is like and how difficult it is to hold on to your house in that sort of an environment. And I've reached out and made some very specific steps to end the foreclosure crisis, starting here on the ground by having foreclosure workshops so that individuals that are having trouble know what their options are and know what they can do to keep their homes or how to gracefully leave their homes. I've written the short sale bill. It's a bipartisan bill that will cause short sale to close within 45 days. And I've spoken out aggressively to make this administration accountable for not doing enough for foreclosures. What we need to do what the administration needs to do is principal reduction so that our people that are having trouble meeting their bills have a chance to stay in their homes. Our economy must end the foreclosure crisis before it can pick up. And I can tell you there's a tremendous resource and a tremendous potential here for growth if we can end the financial crisis, if we can get jobs created. So ending the foreclosure crisis is something that I've taken very specific steps on. And we need to continue to move aggressively to end that crisis.
Tim Daly, your question would go first to Mr. McNerney.
It is clear to anybody who lives in this area, both of you would like this job. In fact, your many flyers make outstanding fans.
I could use one now.
So thank you for that. However, I'm wondering if either of you ever cringe at some of the things you've said about the other. And quick quotes from Mr. Gill. Who is he really working for? He asks about McNerney. He gave a bailout. He took the payout. And Mr. McNerney, Gill's never even had a full-time job. He's got no skills. Now's your chance. Would you like to apologize for anything you've said or written leading up to tonight?
I think that's an important question. The way campaigns are run now I think it's hurting our democracy. Basically, there's a ton of special interest money that's unaccountable, that's secret, that's coming into these races. It's causing partisan divide. It's causing a corrosive effect in Congress. And it's taking away the people's voice. When you see millions of dollars coming into these campaigns that's unaccountable and just does attack, 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 you know darn well that that's going to make it hard to work with the other side after those attacks. So there's several specific things I think we can do. First of all, there's a Disclose Act that I voted for in the last Congress that will at least bring light to who is making these large donations to these campaigns. We can make sure that the next president is a Democrat so that he can appoint someone in the Supreme Court that will overturn Citizens United, which is a terrible decision for our nation. And finally, as a last resort, we can resort to a constitutional amendment to end the money that's coming into these campaigns. Again, it's terribly corrosive, and I think we can do things about it that'll make the situation better. And I'm going to continue to take the position that we need to reform our campaign finances.
Mr. Gill.
There's no doubt that the American people are concerned about the role of money in politics. It's not so much, it's one, how much money, but it's also a serious question about where this money is coming from. And in this campaign, I'm very proud to say that my greatest source of support has been individual folks, ordinary folks up and down the valley, farmers and small business people. And that's a big contrast. My support is in district. My opponent raises 88% of his funds from outside of the district. So it is a question of where the money is coming from. Washington, D.C. and the Bay Area for my opponent, good ordinary folks up and down the valley in my case. What I would also say is, you know, there are legitimate claims which have been made, and I think it's important for the facts to be put forth before people. When someone is purporting to be a friend of the homeowner and then taking money from Wall Street interests, it opens certain questions. You know, my opponent has said some things that the Stockton Record's written about and done fact checks on. Many of those claims were false, Tim. Whether it's Ricky Gill lives at home, that is false. Ricky Gill is, you know, someone who claims have been made about my experience that have been false. In fact, quotes have been invented from the Stockton Record that simply did not appear on those newspaper pages and then put on network TV. So that's corrosiveness, and that's nothing that I believe we should be condoning. What I think we need to do is put the Valley first. That's why I ran for Congress. I ran for Congress because we need a distinctly local voice, even to work across party lines. I've made that point in my campaign. Someone who represented half of Stockton until recently was Congressman Dennis Cardoza. He and I would have agreed on big issues, and I'm sure we will talk about them today.
Thank you. Ms. Shaw, your next question to Mr. Gill.
In the recent presidential debate, Governor Romney indicated that he would defund Planned Parenthood if elected. Do you support this? If not, why not? If yes, why?
I can tell you my stance on these issues. I, for one, don't believe in federal funding for abortion. That is part of the Hyde Amendment and has been congressional practice now for several decades. What I will say with respect to these issues writ large is my focus in this campaign has really been on the bread and butter issues, putting people back to work, fixing our schools, remedying this foreclosure crisis, cleaning up government. I want to say in the presidential debate there was a moment of rare bipartisanship which I want to draw people's attention to. Governor Romney and President Obama might not agree on everything, but the one thing that they did agree on, and so does President Clinton and so does President Bush, is trade. Now that's very beneficial for this community. We have the Port of Stockton here, which is a natural resource. We have a primarily agriculture economy in this district, over $2 billion in San Joaquin County. My opponent signed a pledge to vote against trade deals in Congress, and he's voted against 4 of them. And that is downright detrimental to the economic interests of this district. So I have not emphasized the social issues per se in this campaign. They are not on the tip of people's tongue. What I have talked about is putting our community first.
Mr. McNerney.
Thank you. I want to draw a contrast here. The previous question was, do we regret any of the campaign attacks that are going on? Instead of taking an opportunity, my opponent attacked me on a personal basis. What I say is, I don't think it's helping your cause to attack me on a personal basis. Let's keep to the issues. Planned Parenthood and women's rights is a very big issue. It's a very divisive issue. It's an issue that we need to tread carefully on because it inflames so many passions. But in the bottom line, in my opinion, women should have the right to choose on their own bodies. Again, federal funding is a very difficult issue. We don't want to see people paying taxes into something that they abhor. But on the bottom line, I don't think it's up to me or anyone in government to take the right of a woman away to make the choices, very personal choices between her and her husband or her family. And to do that would be a travesty. It would be intrusive. And therefore, I'm against, I support women's choice.
Dr. Benedetti, your question to Mr. McNerney.
As I know you both know, agriculture is the economic lifeblood of this area. Currently, high corn prices are forcing many in the dairy industry toward bankruptcy, and changes in climate and global markets threaten all agribusiness in this area. At the same time, Stockton and urbanized areas of San Joaquin County are home to many families in poverty that rely on food stamps and other assistance. The House of Representatives has let the Farm Bill expire, endangering programs from soil conservation to milk subsidies. We have now reverted to a 1949 version of that bill. Much of the controversy has to do with funding trade-offs between crop subsidies and food assistance programs. How do you suggest we balance these demands to the benefit of both our farmers and those in need of basic food substances?
Well, thank you for that question. The farm community here is a big part of our economy. They create billions of dollars of value, and I think it's important to reach out to the farm community and offer them whatever support makes sense from the federal government. I've been very effective in providing farmers with a quarantine bill so that they will avert losses. I've been effective in fighting against an estate tax. It would be devastating to farms. And I fought very hard for the Farm Bill to have more emphasis on specialty crops, which are grown here in California and will benefit our farmers. What I can't do is agree to trade agreements that help one sector of the economy over another. And I can tell you, you can ask people about NAFTA, what happened. We lost millions of jobs in this country when NAFTA was passed. You can ask anyone from NUMMI how they feel about these trade agreements that are so one-sided that we will continue to lose manufacturing jobs at the expense. So I can't agree with trade agreements that are very imbalanced against certain sectors of our society. And I think it's very important to get back to the original question that the federal government take a role in providing assistance, food assistance to the people who are at the neediest. And I think that can be done in a way that benefits both the farmers and the people in need.
Mr. Gill.
Sure. Just a very quickly pick up on the last question. I'm very proud to say my mother and father have been practicing OBGYNs in this community for 3 decades, and as a family grew up prioritizing women's health. With respect to agriculture, that's another value that as a family we protect and we believe in, and it's part of the destiny of this district. You mentioned high corn prices and high food prices. There's a problem of rampant dairy suicides today because feed prices have gone so far up because of the ethanol mandate. And it's another reason why we need more leadership on the agriculture issue right here in this district. It's why I decided to run for Congress in the first place. For the past 6 years, we've had a congressman who's really earned his F rating from the Farm Bureau. That's why the Contra Costa, the San Joaquin Farm Bureau, and the California Farm Bureaus endorsed my campaign. This is not a partisan issue. When I look at agriculture, which is something my family's been involved with for several generations, I see both parties up and down the valley agreeing with each other. Congressman Costa, Congressman Cardozo are Valleycrats, along with Republican members of Congress, fought for the trade bills that my opponent swore to oppose. They put regulatory relief for farmers as a priority. They believed in ending the pernicious problem of farm dust regulation. That is not the province of any one party. That is people putting the valley first. And I understand my opponent lives in Pleasanton, which is not in this district, but family farming is a big issue for us here in San Joaquin County. And it's very important that we have a member of Congress who puts our biggest economy first, who emphasizes that, and I will never turn my back on our biggest local economy. I want to emphasize our family farmers because when they're doing well, we're all doing well.
Thank you. Mr. Daly, your question to Mr. Gill.
I bumped into a man on the way in, a friend of mine. I said, "What brings you out?" He says, I'm here because Ricky wants, he's a small government guy. So tell me, how small should government be? And be specific, dollar figures, agencies you'd like to see eliminated. Mr. McNerney, also for you, should government be smaller? Are you comfortable with the size it is?
I believe it's my turn.
Mr. Gill.
With respect to this issue, I am a fiscal conservative. I do believe there's a difference on this stage. When my opponent first got elected to Congress, he promised to eliminate the federal deficit. Yet we've had 4 straight trillion-dollar deficits in this country, and it is a problem. Tim, I espouse a balanced budget amendment. I think we really need to enact rules to guarantee fiscal discipline in Washington. It is something that is going to affect the next generation in a very pronounced way. I want to reform Washington writ large. I believe in a single subject rule so that every bill in Congress just applies to one topic. I believe in sunset provisions. President Reagan used to remind us that the closest thing to eternal life on earth is a federal program. And that is true. And I think one of the defaults should be, do we revisit these programs and see what's working, separate the good from the bad? I believe in a line item veto for the president to extract waste. We need reformers up there who are going to look at the federal budget and make sure that it contains our national priorities. And I, for one, want to do that. Today in Washington, we are borrowing 40 cents of every dollar we spend. As I look out at this audience, as I interact with my neighbors and good, honest people in the 9th District, they cannot operate the way Washington does. They cannot borrow 40 cents of every dollar they spend. Yet that is the premise of my campaign, is making sure folks up there live by the same set of rules that we do.
Ms. Shaw, your next question to Mr. McNerney.
I haven't answered that one yet.
Oh,
so
I'm sorry.
I'll be taking this one. I think that's an important question, and I think there's a lot of validity in the concern over government overreach and overregulation, and I think it's important that we work together on a bipartisan basis to solve that problem. One side of the table saying, well, we need to, excuse me, we need to blow up government, we need to get rid of the federal agencies, we need to get rid of the Department of Education, we need to get rid of the Department, the Environmental Protection Agency. These are not constructive proposals. They basically tend to aggravate the partisan divide that we see in Washington. So it's important to work together. There's some very interesting proposals out there to look at a regulatory science and how science can be used to determine which regulations are effective, and if the ones that aren't effective should be eliminated. Sunset provision, which my opponent mentioned, is an idea worth consideration. But in the long run, there is a need for a federal government. We need a government that can protect our national interests. We need a government that can provide our national defense. And we need a government to help when people need it the most. We need serious infrastructure development so that we can compete in a very difficult and competitive environment out there. So it's important to have a balance between government and private industry, and to let one of those two dominate the other is going to lead to problems one way or the other. So as Aristotle says, balance is the key to a good future.
Ms. Shaw, your next question to Mr. McNerney.
Yes. This is actually a two-part question relating to energy and the environment. The first is, what is your position on the building of the Keystone Pipeline to transport the dirty oil tar sands through the heart of our country from Canada to Texas for processing, and the possible consequences to the environment if there is a break in the line? And the second part of the question, do you support the development of strong regulations to monitor the chemicals employed in the process known as fracking to ensure protection of our public water supplies, and if not, why not?
Well, thank you. That's a good question. Let's start with fracking. Fracking is a process by which chemicals are set under high pressure underwater to release a natural gas and oil that's stored underneath that's not accessible by conventional means. I'm on the Science Committee, and I've seen the debate about this over and over. It's a worthwhile debate. What the Republicans on the committee say, well, geez, we've had 1 million wells, there hasn't been one single leak. Let's just go ahead and do it everywhere without any regulation. That's not realistic. People in the communities want to know what's happening in their communities. If you're going to put a well and put chemicals down there that can contaminate their fresh water, they need to know. This needs to be a transparent process. If you can make the process transparent and safe, and it'll produce natural gas at a good price and give our country a supply of oil for years and years, yeah, let's go forward. But we need transparency. We need a system that allows people the comfort that their groundwater is not going to be contaminated. It's not going to contaminate their soils. With regard to the Keystone Pipeline, there's serious questions about the material that's being pushed through that pipeline. It's very heavy. It's like tar. There's a huge opportunity for a crack in the pipes, which will contaminate thousands and thousands of acres. People in the Midwest are right to be concerned about that process. Again, they need transparency. Trying to push through a project like that without government transparency, without transparency, though people have comfort, the people in the communities aren't going to allow that to go forward.
Thank you.
And that needs to happen.
Mr. Gill.
The American people are suffering right now. We're approaching $5 a gallon gas, and energy is now at the top of the nation's agenda. It has to be. I want to be a constructive voice on this issue. My opponent and I do have some differences on this. I appreciate his answer. He and I disagree on the Keystone Pipeline. I would have voted for it. I believe that's a windfall to the American people. That was energy that was provided to us via Canada, one of our nation's strongest allies. And because it's not being built, now that energy supply is going to Asia. And that does not benefit the American people. We know we have a problem with supply, and that's why gas prices are so high. My opponent and I disagree on the importance of supply. He published a book last year where he said it is patriotic for the American people to pay high gas prices. I don't believe that. I believe this is hurting middle-class families. And as the next congressman from this district, I'm going to fight ardently to reduce gas prices here, because that's part of the middle-class squeeze in this country. It's debt, it's rising health care premiums, it's rising gas prices, and we need to fix this. We need an all-of-the-above energy strategy. I know in your question you cited regulatory reform and looking at regulations. I think all major federal regulations, instead of being stuck in the bureaucracy, should be rerouted to Congress for up or down floor votes. And I suspect this would be an example of that. There was a measure in Congress last year to do just that called the RAINS Act. I think Congress needs to be back in the driver's seat as opposed to letting the agencies make law in the shadows.
Thank you. Dr. Benedetti, your next question is to Mr. Gill first.
This last Sunday, the Stockton Record, or I think I should say the Record, reported that representatives of the North and South Valley water interests have reached a substantive agreement concerning the need to repair delta levees and other decaying aspects of the current water conveyance system. However, disagreement remains strong regarding a peripheral canal or underwater pipeline through the delta. How would you help to craft a solution to to overcome this continuing conflict?
I do believe there is an importance on this issue. This is vitally important. I'm someone who was born and raised in this community on a family farm. And if a peripheral canal is built, it is going to devastate our family farming base in this community. I will not let it happen. And I'm going to fight every day, tooth and nail, against it. On this issue, there are things that we can do with respect to water storage, groundwater recharge, that are consensus issues. But of course, there's deep disagreement around the state on the peripheral canal. Here, we have to oppose it. It is our greatest industry that is on the line. Now, with respect to the peripheral canal, I think my opponent's been a bit of a Jerry-come-lately on this issue. For it took him 5 years to mention the words peripheral canal on the floor of the U.S. House. It wouldn't take me 5 minutes to mention this. This is too important. It's a sacred part of our community. My opponent also, we did a public records request. To date, my opponent has not written once to the Department of Water Resources in California saying the peripheral canal is a bad idea for the Delta communities. So that's why we can't outsource our congressman any longer. Unless we have a truly local voice, we will be left behind on everything from the massive double the national unemployment we face, but also our water. It's important for the Delta communities to finally speak with an authentic local voice. I hope to be that voice.
Mr. McNerney?
Well, thank you. There's a lot of difference between words and actions. My record on this is very clear. Starting in 2007, the Stockton Record reported that I've been opposed to the peripheral canal. I've spoken out. I've created committees. I've brought the Delta counties together to stand shoulder to shoulder. I've stand shoulder to shoulder with members of Congress to stop the secret meetings of the BDCP. We worked to stand up to Senator Feinstein, to Governor Brown, to the Obama administration. We're doing everything we possibly can to prevent this from happening. My opponent, on the other hand, talks a good talk, but he takes tens of thousands of dollars from members of the Weston's Water Board who are hell-bent on putting in a peripheral canal. So I just want to know how we can trust someone that takes money from the people that are most determined to put in a peripheral canal. We need to do everything possible to prevent that from happening. That delta is the most valuable resource, a natural resource that this community has. And I will do everything I can to prevent that from happening. And I know that the community is behind me on this. We must not let a peripheral canal. I have an excellent record on this, and I hope the community can stand by me and get this thing stopped. Thank you.
Mr. Daly, your next question is to Mr. McNerney.
I'm sorry?
Next question to Mr. McNerney.
I apologize for both of you having to consider the unbelievable. But if you lose, Mr. McNerney, you say you live in Stockton. Do you stay here? You say that this is a district with potential. Does that mean you help us reach our potential? And Mr. Gill, when you get this question, you said we're going to put the valley first. That's your. If you lose, what's your next step? Do you stay here and maybe aim a little lower and work on getting the valley past its problems?
Well, that's a very personal question. I've
got more.
I've committed to the Valley. We moved out here in May, and I've been here since Congress ended sessions in early August. I've been out here full time. Before that, I was back and forth to Washington doing the nation's business. But yes, the Stockton has a tremendous potential. You can see it when you go out there. It's a self-help county. The roads are going in. The infrastructure is being developed. The Port of Stockton, the greatest private sector job creator, is doing fine. We want to continue to work on that. I think this is a wonderful place. I've put in roots now, and I see this place growing, and I see jobs being created. We need to work on a couple of very specific things. The crime issue is a top priority. We need to do everything we can to stop violence in the streets of Stockton. And I've done some specific things to help bring back the Operation Ceasefire, which was so effective years ago, both in Stockton and other communities, to stop the violence. I brought home $8 million of grants for our police departments around San Joaquin County, which hires 30 police officers. We need to do more. It's not enough, but until we stop the violence in this county, in this city, we're not going to see much improvement. And as soon as we do see it, we will see businesses moving in here because of the low prices, because of the availability of labor. This is a tremendous place for growth.
Mr. Gill.
Very quickly on the last question, my opponent mentioned contributions from farmers around the state. The truth is farmers around the state do support me, in some cases in spite of my opposition to the peripheral canal. They support me because of issues of trade and regulatory reform. So just want to set the record straight. With respect to this community is in my heart. It's the community I've always called home. I didn't need a transition effort to come here. I believe in this community. This is the only place where I've set down roots. I'm born and raised here. There's an unequivocal commitment to the people of this valley and this delta, and I hope that emanates from everything I've done in this campaign. I've, of course, involved in this effort, but I'm a proud member of the Lodi Boys and Girls Club Board. My service to the communities of this district precedes and will follow this campaign, and I'm very proud of that. My family has invested here in an emotional way, a deeply emotional way, whether it's my family's medical practice or our agriculture interests here. I believe that this community has a brighter day ahead. I believe we need to start representing ourselves. For far too long, we've been politically marginalized, and it shows. And the reason there was an urgency behind this campaign was we had a new opportunity to step up and assert ourselves in the political process. And that was the motivation for me running, and that continues to be the theme of my race today.
Thank you. Ms. Shaw? You. Your next question is for Mr. Gill.
The reauthorization of Violence Against Women Act, which was H.R. 4970, passed initially in 1994, is currently in limbo due to party disagreements, particularly in the House, on inclusions and exclusions in the bill on protections for gay, immigrant, American Indian, and student victims. What is your stance on reauthorization of this act, which is central to the nation's efforts against domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking?
I've not read the particulars of the version that I think is under present consideration. What I would say is, I do stand for equal pay for equal work for women. I've said that. With respect to the Violence Against Women's Act, it's an important legal regime. It needs to be sustained. I do believe that this has to be a bipartisan priority. I know a lot gets stuck in the legislative logjam of Washington, D.C., but this is not something that should be a political football. And on women's issues, I have been very outspoken in this campaign. When one of Congressman McNerney's colleagues, albeit a Republican, Todd Akin, said some very objectionable things in his campaign for U.S. Senate, I was the only one in this race to outright condemn those remarks in the Stockton Record. I found them to be reprehensible. And my opponent, I'm interested to hear his views on that, but I was very quick to denounce them, and I have talked about women's rights and women's issues in this campaign as well.
Mr. McNerney.
Well, thank you. I just want to, for a minute, go back to the subject of my opponent taking tens of thousands of dollars from the board of the Westlands Water District. Now, the Westlands Water District is the district that's behind the big effort to put the peripheral canal around here. They're not a charity case. They're not doing things out of the goodness of their heart. They're going to want their money back, and they're going to get it back if this man gets elected to Congress. And we got to stop the peripheral canal from going in.
I've not taken any money from the Westlands Water Board. I want to be very clear about that.
Please, Mr. McNerney, please address the question.
Now, violence against women is an absolute abhorrence. There's no place for violence against women in our society. I will work with anyone across the aisle on any subject, on any day, to put legislation in place to prevent violence from women and for making hate statements against women or any other group. For example, the statements that have fired up the man to kill the Sikh people in Wisconsin was absolutely unacceptable. Hate talk is a problem for our country. We need to find a way to control it and make it unacceptable and to make it a shameful act, and that'll go a long way to helping prevent these sorts of violent acts that are so corrosive to our society.
Thank you. We're coming to the end of the forum now, and it's time for closing statements. Mr. Gill, you go first.
I want to thank the University of the Pacific for hosting us, to the League for moderating this forum, and to family, friends, and citizens who are watching this debate. Over 30 years ago, my mother and father immigrated to this great country. They settled in Stockton. Their goal was to pursue the American dream. However, as you know, most people are leaving the valley, not coming here. There's a lack of economic opportunity. We have double the national unemployment rate and immense hardship here. I hear about it every day. It's about single mothers and returning veterans who are having to juggle the very real life decisions of, do they fill their cars with a tank of gas or pay for rising health care premiums? It's about young people who have to decide whether or not they're supposed to stay in school or drop out and supplement their family's income. If you're from here, you know what it feels like to be marginalized. You know what it feels like to be forgotten. The sad truth is, we have been neglected by our current Bay Area congressman. There is, fortunately, a silver lining, and it is the choice in this election. And it is a stark contrast. I am very proud to call this community my home. To my opponent, this community is really a second choice. I want to stand up for private sector job growth. Under my opponent's watch, unemployment here has doubled. Our water is about to be sent to LA. Our farmers and our small businesses are hurting. I want to fight to bring down gas prices. My opponent believes that you paying high gas prices is somehow an act of patriotism. I served on the State Board of Education and want to prioritize education reform. My opponent's not really advanced education reform, even though it's badly needed here in cities like Stockton. I want to be an advocate for cleaner government. Under my opponent's watch, he's voted to send our hard-earned taxpayer dollars to companies like Solyndra and the big Wall Street banks that caused this foreclosure mess right here. We cannot afford to outsource our congressman any longer. Our quality of life is at stake. And on November 6th, I'm asking not just for your vote. I am hoping to earn your trust. Thank you again for having me.
Mr. McNerney, please. We are running out of time, and let's give Mr. McNerney his time for closing statements.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank the League of Women Voters, the panelists, the moderator, my opponent, and everyone here for coming out for our democracy. It's truly been an honor and a privilege to serve this community for the last 6 years. And I'm very proud of the things I've been able to accomplish, starting with bringing the Veterans Hospital here to this community, which will not only serve our veterans, but will create 900 jobs when that ground is broken late next year. I've been able to bring 250 jobs for public transportation, and I've brought a significant amount of money for the Port of Stockton for infrastructure development, because the Port of Stockton is the greatest job creator in our region. I've worked hard on the foreclosure crisis by having workshops, by writing the foreclosure, the short sale bill, and by holding the administration accountable. I'm an absolute champion for veterans issues throughout this county and throughout this country. People that serve our country in uniform need to have the services that they've earned. And I'm a champion of the Delta, working shoulder to shoulder against the administration, against the governor, to make sure that that doesn't happen, the most valuable resource we have in our community. And I want to continue to serve this community because I see such a potential here. I want to do right by the people that live here. I have a clear understanding of the issues, and I want to continue to make a difference in people's lives. Let me end by telling you stories about two very exceptional people I met. One was a middle-aged woman whose mother had Alzheimer's disease. She had to quit her job to take care of her mother, and in the process lost her house and everything. That's no way to treat our seniors and our families. That's why I supported the difficult health care reform bill. And the other one is a young Afghanistan veteran who served our nation in Afghanistan, came back, he was homeless, he was living out of a car, and he heard about one of our job training programs, took advantage of that program, and now he's gainfully employed at PG&E. These and thousands of other people deserve to have a chance at the American dream. I will work for the middle class and not for the wealthy of this country, and I hope you give me the chance to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I was going to say that we should give both of our candidates a round of applause, so let's do that now. Thank you.